We are live. You're in a tent, man. How could you could you be more authentic than this, eh? In a tent. Wow.
Hopefully, people will still take me seriously, even though I'm in a tent.
Bro,
Hopefully.
if anything, this proves to me even more why we should take you serious and validates that you're not doing this out of no hotel room with no support, no funding. You truly are on your own in a tent, and this is the kind of courage that is required if you're going to go on this path, ready to let everything go and keep following that inner calling. So just thank you for continuing. I know it's been a busy kind of month for you.
Oh wow, it's been unbelievable. On that subject, what you just said, we've got to be willing to make sacrifices in all of this. And if I have to stay in a tent or I have to lose my life over this, then
Yeah,
that's what's going to have to happen. That's how far I'm willing to go with this.
yeah,
So on the 12th of September is when I actually took part in my strategy to talk, which we're going to talk about in a minute, actually, to actually target peacefully and legally through exposure
yes,
the the organizations that are on the front line of this fraud. Okay, so I actually took part in that on the 12th of September and did that myself. It's no coincidence that a week later on the 19th, okay, I was parked up. I was parked up at a location near Inverness, and a police officer originally parked up next to me. Okay, and I knew the risks involved. I knew they were involved, so I hid in the back of the van. I basically went in the back of the van, closed the curtain off, and of course they were knocking on the door, trying to answer the door, and I didn't answer it. But they also had a black four-wheel drive vehicle that was sat up, 2023 plate, was sat up in front of my vehicle with a man in it for ages afterwards, trying to look straight down through into my vehicle, obviously, so they were trying to get to me. Anyway, so they then went away because I waited long enough, and then the police car came back maybe 2 hours or so later, and he saw me. I was outside of the van, so I thought, right, I'm going to approach him. I'm going to be completely honest, and I went and approached him, and I said, look, I didn't answer the van to you earlier because of what I'm exposing, and I told him about what I was exposing. I even showed him a YouTube video. I said, look, you guys, you are in the thick of this now. And basically explained it as best as I could.
yeah,
He said, oh no, it's okay. We've just basically had a call that because you were parked here for a couple of days, they were concerned that something might have happened to you. I'm thinking, yeah, right, of course, yeah, okay. And he said, no, you can stay another night here if you want. I was like, okay, and he went away. Anyway, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, or around that time, I drove away, and he was parked up waiting for me to leave. So he was parked up at the side, and I ended up pulling over, and this is when the stop happened. And I knew exactly where it was going to go, so I cautioned him straight away. I cautioned him. It's on and I had this all on TikTok, so I live streamed everything.
yeah. We saw it. We saw it.
Yeah, so if I hadn't have done that, I might not even still be here today.
Yeah, yeah.
To be honest,
Seriously.
there were 900 people watching that live stream. So I cautioned the guy. Obviously, because I realised where this was going to go, and he continued. I offered to show the evidence multiple times. It's all shown on the video. I had the document in the vehicle. I could have proven everything with the DVLA and the insurance companies. Couldn't obviously just go and walk in without him allowing me to, because then you're starting to, him getting concerned.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he continued. So I arrested him. So I used the words, didn't physically arrest him. So I arrested that police officer. They then got 2 other police officers to come up. I then tried to show the evidence and tried to explain everything. They obviously didn't want to know. So I arrested them as well, cautioned them and arrested those 3 police officers and asked that they get people to come to the location that are not corrupted by this system.
Yeah.
Anyway, they then obviously wanted my details, and I knew that by refusing my details, they were probably going to arrest me. So I refused the details in the hope that it would trigger an investigation so that I could implement my evidence through into their legal system. Okay. Yep. So they arrested me, seized the van, took me to Inverness police station, and within 2 or 3 hours, they were going to bail me in relation to the road traffic side of things. Okay. And they offered me the bail form to sign, and the sergeant that was offering it to me, it was as if he knew something was going to happen to me if I left. Because he was like saying words to the effect of, look, it's entirely voluntarily if you want to sign this. It's up to you. I can't make you sign this. Like he said that quite a few times.
Yeah,
and my instinct said, do not sign this. Do not leave the police station at the moment.
Yeah.
So I made sure I told them all, everywhere I was going in custody, I was saying, look, I'm uncovering serious major fraud here. Everything you're doing is now unlawful because of this forgery, because of the forgery behind the system.
Yep.
And I explained the links to the Russian government and said, the risks to me. Anyway, they put me back in the cell, and this gave me a bit of thinking time. And strategically, I thought, what can I do? Well, I disabled a cell tower publicly. I'd actually disabled a mobile communication tower. So I thought, right, if I start trying to get them to interview me for that, then I can implement in through that investigation everything else that I've exposed and how that links into the cell towers. So I made around 9 comments to the staff, the jailers, the custody sergeant, saying, look, you need to interview me for a cell tower. I've disabled a cell tower. I need to be interviewed in a formal interview.
So you admitted that straight away. You wanted them to
Yeah.
speak. You wanted them to speak about you disabling that 5G tower.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Very significant.
Because I know that there's defences in law for doing it, and I know that there is no crime because of the defences in the evidence that I have surrounding it. And I was hoping to implement then all of the other evidence through that investigation. I could, if they'd have sat me in an interview, I could have sung like a bird about everything that I've found out, including the links to the children. And it literally is irrefutable evidence. Don't forget, what I've got is beyond all reasonable doubt. It is all connected to these crimes against humanity. Anyway, so I was in for 2 or 3 days. They reminded me, no interview whatsoever about the cell tower. Okay, so I could tell they didn't want me sat in an interview. And then it came to going to court for the traffic offences. They charged me for the traffic offences and bailed me to court. As I was about to leave, they then arrested me for the cell tower because I went not guilty to the insurance side of things, because you can't be fair. They cannot penalise somebody for refusing to non-comply to irrefutable evidence of forgery behind those organisations. It's just not legally possible.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I stood within that power and I went not guilty. All right. In relation to the traffic offences, knowing that I would get an opportunity at court to implement that evidence, about it all.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they then arrested me for the cell tower. They then started restricting my rights. So I was struggling to be able to get, they refused my bail on my home address based on the non-molestation order, okay, that was in place that I told you about at the beginning, even though they had twice offered me bail, even though that non-molestation order was there. So they were trying to think, right, how can we get to Gary? Well, now we'll refuse his bail. Yeah. Okay, we'll say it's because of the non-molestation order. That way we can get him in prison. Okay, They then delayed my rights. I couldn't get another bail address. I was not able to go into my phone. I was not able to phone anybody for days. I couldn't even speak to anyone, and I went in prison. So when I was in prison, I thought, okay, this is potentially an opportunity for them to get rid of me in prison. We all know what happened to Jeffrey Epstein and Max Clifford, and the speculation that I suspect they didn't die, but there is speculation that if they did, then they might have been unalived whilst they were in prison. It wasn't suicide. Yeah. And of course, my evidence connects directly to Jeffrey Epstein. So, of course, I had to think really tactically here. And I was like, what do I do? How do I stay alive? How do I protect me and therefore the evidence? So I decided to create a bit of a stir in prison. And what I mean by that is I shouted everywhere who I was, a former police officer, to all the inmates. I shouted, I'm investigating government crime linked to crimes against children. And I basically did that as much as I could everywhere when I was in prison. So I was shouting for myself. Obviously, this gained a reaction from the prisoners. Initially, it was a bit hostile. In the end, it appears as though that I was winning a lot of them over. Okay, a lot of the prisoners.
Even being an ex-policeman in prison, that you still managed to win them over, even saying this to them. Wow, what a moment in history to have been in prison with you at that moment. Wow.
Yeah, there was a time where, because I was shouting this for about half an hour from my cell, and you can see they didn't know what to do about it, because I was saying the prison service are involved, the police are involved, crimes against children, shouting this at the top of my voice. The whole wing that I was in would definitely have heard saying, and I was getting responses back from the prisoners. Anyway, they then put me in isolation at that point, and I went into a different cell out the back of the prison. And where was I going to go with that? So, but I was still able to communicate with some of the prisoners through the cell. So whilst I was in there, that was for about 3 days. I was in there. I was allowed out for probably less than an hour for the first 2 or 3 days, and then about an hour a day. So it was pretty tough. You know, I'm not somebody that can sit in a little room very easily and just do nothing.
Yeah.
So that was tough. No phone. I couldn't speak to anyone on the phone. You know, so it was really tough. They made me feel quite intimidated. But anyway, so during this process, I was obviously shouting out the cell door the same things, and this created a bit of an interaction with some other inmates.
Yeah.
Now, I actually believe those inmates was positioned specifically for me at that point. I think they were actors because one of them was saying that he was directly connected to Keir Starmer, who I'd just been exposing.
They got to
And
try
he was
harder,
saying,
man. They've got to try
it
harder.
was just, I mean, I even said to them, I said, look, you've been positioned, haven't you, to shout this to me?
Oh my
And they
God.
said, yes. He even said, yes. So,
Oh wow.
so anyway, this goes on for 2 or 3 days. Those same guys, then I believe they're being led to tell me and shout to me that my food's being poisoned, they're going to kill me, my water's going to be poisoned, or they're going to come in the middle of the night and strangle me in my cell. So,
Wow,
of
you don't
course,
want
I'm
that.
thinking, blimey, you know, am I going to get out of this? I don't know if I'm going to survive this. So then I had to think tactically again. So I decided, because they were stopping all of my rights and not even responding to a lot of my requests, I decided to speak to the nurse in the prison to try and use this evidence of the threat of poisoning my food to protect me. So
Yeah.
I got it recorded with the nurse that this has been shouted to me. I told her what I'm exposing: international government fraud, linking to Jeffrey Epstein, etc. So at least that was then recorded
Yeah.
with somebody else. I was concerned about my food being poisoned and the water, etc., and etc.
And
So
Gary, you said the day you came out, you said to me that on your live that they forced you to eat meat as well. They didn't give you a vegetarian option, so you was forced to eat the meat, and you haven't ate meat for years. 8 years, you said.
yeah, so I was given no option to have a vegetarian option in the menu. So I was kept getting meat, and you know,
Wow.
sometimes I did eat a bit of it, but yeah, I haven't eaten meat for 8 years. Most of the time, I would leave the meat and just eat whatever was left on the plate whilst I was in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I even requested, I put a separate request in then on a document through the prison to try and get vegetarian food, and I had no response to that whatsoever, and I was still getting meat put on my plate.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. So this all went on. I was constantly thinking, like, how do I protect myself? How do I make sure I can get out of here? So I made complaints at every single opportunity wherever I could. Made written complaints. I had several meetings within the prison with the governor, and explained everything to them. You know, making all of the connections that I could to how big this was. Anyway, yeah, there was a point where I was out going back to what we were saying. There was a point where I was out in the yard when I was being given the exercise for about an hour, and a load of prisoners just suddenly stopped by there's like a big mesh gate at the entrance to their yard, and they all go, there's Gary Waterman. And I had about 20 or 30 inmates, prisoners, all there
Wow.
wanting to speak to me. And I couldn't go over to them. I was saying, look, I want to come over and speak to you, but they're not allowing me to. They wouldn't let me go and speak to them. So anyway, yeah, it was tough. So eventually I got a bail address, and they let me out, but they gave me a travel warrant, which and told me within conditions that I had to leave Scotland, the whole of Scotland, within 42 hours. Okay.
Wow.
Now, bearing in mind, I hadn't been interviewed. They still have not interviewed me for the cell towers. Okay. I still have not had a chance to plead guilty or not guilty in relation to the disabling the cell tower. So they wanted me out of Scotland. Now, what this meant is I had no option to try and sort out my motorhome that they're seized from me.
Yeah.
I couldn't resolve any of the issues surrounding that, and I had to leave Scotland. And they bailed me to this address in Torquay, which I'd got from somebody that was kind enough to offer me a secondary bail address. Eventually, I got that.
Yeah.
But I had to think, okay, well, if I go to that address, and with what they've done, and they haven't even interviewed me yet, do they want to get to me and silence me before I even get to that legal system, before I even get my evidence on record? So I had to make a difficult decision to go homeless. So this is why what I've done is I've bought a tent, and I'm going to have to stay in a tent. Now that's obviously a bit more difficult for me, but I have to think of the bigger picture here on how I preserve the evidence through me, because at the moment, nobody else in the world, as far as I'm aware, is actually building the evidence that I am and securing that which we're going to talk about a little bit as we go forward.